So game 6 has a lot of green cards on the board. Nobles, Fairgrounds, and Silk Road. Silk Road especially likes all these green cards. Now in terms of draw, Library can draw, but it's a bit cumbersome to set it up with Nobles and expensive as well. Torturer also draws, but Torturer isn't that good here in the face of Ambassador and Library to take advantage of the reduced hand size, and Gear doesn't actually draw cards with the nobles as your action, so the draw is kinda weak here, and you want to buy a lot of green cards. So what does that mean? Well, you have to do some kind of money-ish thing and then go after the green cards. That being said, I do not want to be hit with Ambassador every turn and have to deal with coppers or curses coming into my deck all the time. So I'm going to open with an Ambassador and a Gear here. The Gear is for later on in the game really, or to perhaps set up Ambassador with 2 estates or something like that. My opponent also opens with Gear Ambassador here. So you can build something here, is what I want to say here. So you can build something with a bunch of nobles, for example, or nobles library, and get an ambassador in play every turn. Junk your opponent into oblivion by giving them all 10 curses or something. That is not something I want to have happen to me, so I hope that my ambassador can put in some work here and avoid such a mess in my deck. I don't get off to a great start. My opponent sends me an estate, getting rid of 2 estates from their deck, and is able to pick up a charm now, whereas I am not able to retain any estates and not able to buy anything on that turn because I have too many estates on my deck. In my deck, sorry. Not only that, my opponent is playing their gear, getting up to 6 high price points to pick up nobles, and I feel quite behind at this point in the game. My opponent seems to be doing really well. I think about whether or not to play Gear or Ambassador here, and I feel like the Ambassador is the most important thing to play, especially considering that my opponent will shuffle on the next turn. So I do play the Ambassador over the Gear. I still haven't played the Gear yet, but eventually I'll get there. I'll get there. So fortunately, I'm able to buy another silver here. With the silver, we have the aqueduct in place, so that's just something to keep in mind. Bit of incentive to go after the nobles, but nothing too grand. There's only 1 point on it right now, and I actually give my opponent it by shipping him some estates. So that is going to happen over the course of the whole ambassador war. Speaking of which, my opponent now has a second ambassador. I wasn't sure about this. I'm not really certain how much use he is going to get out of it, but maybe his gear will let him separate his terminals nicely. Picks up another charm. I would really like to have a charm as well here, but I feel like I have to pick up the nobles right now. So I did have a couple good shuffles after the initial few bad ones. So for example, there's an ambassador in my gear right now, so I will be able to ship 2 estates across to my opponent, which is real good news for me. Real good news for me, although he is able to give me back a couple estates here, but with all the gears, not gears, all the charms in his deck, it made his ambassador not attack me as frequently. So he used his charm there to gain another gear and a silver, which is nice. He seems to be setting up for playing a long game with all these gears. That's why I also want the gears as well. In a kind of slug style deck, the gears can put in a lot of work. So I'm happy to have a couple gears now, and I seem to be hitting 6 somewhat consistently at this point, which is pretty good for me. I don't quite get up to it here, but I feel like I shouldn't set anything aside with the gear and instead pick up a charm of my own. So here is where the tables start to turn with respect to the ambassador stuff. my deck is a lot thinner than my opponent's at this point, I feel. And I have enough money to pick up nobles, and well, nobles is really what I want right now. It can help enable an engine type deck, and not only that, the Silk Roads love that card, so that is what I'm going to focus on for this part of the game here. But my opponent's deck has swelled up a little bit, which is good news for me, right? Good news for me. Although it isn't like terribly detrimental given that there's Silk Roads on the board and you want to kind of go after those maybe, or Fairgrounds at some point in the game. It is possible to get up to 6-point Fairgrounds on this board. So that's something again to keep in mind. A lot of green cards you want to buy on this board. You need to have the money to be able to do so. Now, I do have a library at this point. Unfortunately, my nobles and library collided, giving me this turn. So you can see my deck here and compare it to my opponent's deck up there. The tables have indeed turned with the Ambassador War, and I'm firmly in charge of that. So here I pick up a charm. I have a plan for the next couple of turns. I'm now going to transition my deck out of this Druid deck type thing and just stick a lot of money into it. The first step being charm. I hopefully can see my charm with all my money, which I do here, and I will gain a gold alongside a noble. Seems really good. Not only do I get those two key cards, but I also get an extra point from it by gaining gold from the aqueduct, is what I mean, from the aqueduct. So things are looking pretty good for me at this point in the game. Pretty good for me at this point in the game. I'm able to draw a lot of my deck, and if not, I can always set things up with the gear. Picking up the last nobles here means that the split is 4 each, so that's good enough for me, especially given the start that my opponent had. Now, I am planning, like I said, to transition the deck into more money, region. So how do I do that? Well, really, it's just about buying a bunch of golds. This is an excellent hand here. I think about whether or not I should return all of these coppers. I would like to keep a copper in my deck just for the purposes of Fairgrounds. As it turns out, I have another copper in my deck. I thought that, well, look, he'll give me a copper at some point, so I don't have to worry about holding back a copper, but I had one in my deck, so that is good. Good news for me. Gear sets aside a couple of nobles, so the deck is swimming along quite nicely, but if I put more action, not more action cards, more money cards into it, it will break. I won't be able to draw this nicely, and that's something I just have to deal with and play accordingly with. So here I pick up a second library. Not really sure that was correct, but definitely the capital I liked a lot. It is going to put in a lot of work for the rest of this game, and you could argue that I perhaps should have bought more than one capital in this game. As it turns out, I only end up buying the one capital so that it would serve as a unique for the Fairgrounds, but I know that in this slug type deck, the capital will put in a lot of work. So my opponent still sometimes chains his nobles and gears and whatnot, and he's actually able to come up with 11 here and 2 buys. And that allows him to pick up a silver plus a province, gaining the extra point from the aqueduct. Seems pretty nice, and I think that's what he has to do given that he ended up losing the Ambassador War. So he's starting in on the points, and I'm actually going to follow him soon enough here. Playing both my libraries just to draw up the last copper in my deck is what I wanted. And what I am coming up with here, I believe, is something like $14. Yeah, or potentially 16, right? I decide to choose the 14 and gain from the charm. I pick up a gold and a Fairgrounds, and I will pick up a province at this point. So here I'm looking at this point to go after fairgrounds. They're cheap provinces. I can easily make them be worth up to 15. I think I need 3 or 4 more uniques at this point in the game. And where I can't buy fairgrounds, perhaps I should buy silk roads. My opponent has quite a few estates in his deck, so he has a lead on the silk road thing if he decides to go for it. So we'll see how things go from here. Now I feel like I have a decent amount of money in my deck and I can start going after these green cards. And if I feel like I need more money, well, I have enough plus buy in my capital and my charm to be able to get the necessary money if I need to. So another silver for my opponent as well as another gear. I quite like his gears. He has a couple extra gears to me. I wish I had a few more gears in my deck, but I didn't really get time to pick up those gears. What I'm gonna do here, I complain about the gears. I could have easily gained silver gear here, but what I'm gonna do here is pay off my debt, leaving me with 5, and I choose to gain with the charm, gaining duchy and a second charm. Again, perhaps that should have been another capital, but I decided to go for the charm here, which is basically a silver at this point. And I snatched the point of the aqueduct, which is okay, right? It's not the greatest thing in the world. Anyways, so now we are both in this slug stage of the deck, right? And if you don't know what a slug is where you just buy some money up front and then you buy a lot of green cards for a long time in this game. And my opponent does signal his intent here to go after the Silk Roads, picking up a couple of them. So that is something I have to keep an eye out for. He does have quite a few more estates to me. And if I'm not careful, the Silk Roads can come back to bite me. So I'm unable to buy anything here. Just I'm going to pay off the debt. The debt was sometimes a liability in this game, but I really like the explosive power of the capital just to come out of nowhere, give you $6 and a buy to go with it. So my opponent gets another Silk Road here. Really have to start doing something about this. But with all this money here, I think province is still better. I will be able to pick up a few Silk Roads when I see my plus buy cards later on in the deck, I believe. So I'm going to pick up a second province. My opponent has a province. He started off things, if you remember correctly, the provinces, that is. And he is still able to chain together things sometimes, as will happen eventually if you play long enough. Getting to a couple Silk Roads here. So he has 5 of those now. And I'm hoping by playing this library instead of the gear that I can draw the extra card, which would help me to get 3 Silk Roads. I know I have the capital and the charm in the back. As it is, I do find my second charm giving me more than 3 buys, 4 buys, and I am able to get all the remaining Silk Roads combined with a silver, which gives me the extra point from the aqueduct, which is nice, right? A little bit of extra economy to buy victory cards. So now the Silk Roads are empty, and the split went in the favor of my opponent, 5-3, but really I'm not worried because I feel like I have more money than my opponent. That's really what it boils down to in this deck. I also have the capital, which I quite like in this type of deck. So here I pay off the debt, but next time when I see that capital, you could bet your bottom dollar something big is going to happen. So now for me here, I think the plan is to go into Fairgrounds, and I think my opponent cannot really challenge me on the Fairgrounds for 2 reasons. One, he doesn't have the money, as much money as I do. I think I have more money. He even gives me a silver here, which is wild. I think he did that just so that he could get the extra point off of the aqueduct. I don't know if that was worth it at all, but he ended up making that play. So yeah, as I was saying, I don't think my opponent can contest me on the Fairgrounds because he doesn't have the money to buy Fairgrounds as frequently as I do. Picks up our duchy here. and he doesn't have the uniques, right? All this while I was preparing my deck to be able to get up to 15 uniques for the fairgrounds. And he wasn't doing so. He doesn't have a library, he doesn't have a capital, things like that. Mostly just those things, really. And he would need to stop to buy those things in order to make the fairgrounds be close to be with 6 points. So 10 and 2 buys there is 2 duchies. It's better for the Silk Roads to pick up the 2 duchies. I could have gone Province Estate, even Fairgrounds Estate or something there. Maybe that was better, but the 2 duchies seemed to give me the biggest points advantage at that point in the game. So now my opponent is starting to buy estates, right? And I have to pay very close attention to the score to know where he is on upgrading his Silk Roads, because every time they bump up, they'll give him 5 extra points, and I need to keep that in mind, especially when it comes to ending the game. I don't want to give my opponent an opportunity to end the game and be able to bump up his Silk Roads, giving him the win. 12 and 3 buys for me there is going to be a couple fairgrounds and a curse. Finally, that curse is the 15th unique in my deck. So now all subsequent fairgrounds, well, all fairgrounds, not subsequent, all fairgrounds will be worth 6 points to me. Cheap provinces. That is extremely valuable in a deck that is cluttered with green cards right now. So 8 and 2 buys, my opponent goes for Fairgrounds Estate, giving him the most amount of green cards. At this point, he's just trying to fatten his Silk Roads, right? Just trying to fatten his Silk Roads. He's very close to me in points, and once those Silk Roads bump up, he'll perhaps even bypass me on points. Me turning my Fairgrounds into 6-point Fairgrounds allowed me to jump past him, but here he picks up an estate, and that pushes his Fairgrounds up. So he has 4 more green cards before he is able to upgrade his Silk Roads. I have to keep that in mind. Here I'm able to pay off my debt, not able to do anything. Again, little bit scary on those turns, especially when my opponent is able to pick up a province like here. Don't know where this came from, but he's able to get a province. That's real good for him. But like I said, this explosive power here, look at this, 14 and 2 buys. If need be, that could have been province and fairgrounds. Instead, I decided to just save a couple money back so I could pay off some debt, and 2 fairgrounds is pretty commanding. So not only do I need to pay attention to my opponent's Silk Roads, I need to pay attention to mine. Perhaps I could end the game and be able to win on the Silk Roads bump up. Setting aside Ambassador and Fairgrounds here because I'm thinking about the end of the game. Maybe I could ship a Fairgrounds to my opponent and buy a Fairgrounds on the next turn because they're worth only 4 points to him but 6 points to me. So just thinking about the end game here a little bit. There's only 2 Fairgrounds left, 4 duchies, 4 estates, 6 for my opponent. He can't really touch the Fairgrounds, so he has to go for duchy, giving him the lead here by 3 points. Very tense end game. This copper I give back to my opponent just to make my library draw more. I know I have coppers in the deck. I bought a few earlier on because it helps my action density, not my action, my money density at that point in the game. Now here I only come up with 3 and I have to scan the log to make sure that my opponent does not have his plus buys coming up. And as it turns out, he used 2 of his 3 charms, I believe, so far, so there's no way he could win on triple estate. I believe also if he goes for triple estate, he will turn up his Silk Roads another level. So that is not something I want to do. So just checking to make sure he cannot buy 3 estates. He cannot. And I do buy this estate here. My capital I know is coming up. I just have to hold out for long enough, and being able to buy another Fairgrounds is so strong. Turns out I don't need to wait for capital to buy Fairgrounds. This is good enough for Fairgrounds for me here. I'm getting very close to bumping up my Silk Roads as well. So that is good news for me. Good news. Seem to be in okay shape here, even though my my opponent is slightly ahead. He just has too little money for the amount of green cards in his deck. He spends quite a bit of time thinking here, and I'm not sure what he comes up with. Yeah, he just ends up buying a copper here. I guess he didn't feel comfortable about touching any of the piles at this point in the game, but I'm happy to buy a Fairgrounds here. I don't think he can buy a Fairgrounds at this point in the game. It would require a fluke and a draw, I think. And yeah, he comes up with not too much at this point in the game. 4 and 2 buys, he could go for a couple of estates, but he just goes for a silver, and this nobles draws me into the capital for the win on the fairground. So that is game 6. An absolute slog, just going back and forth, but in the end, I think I had a bit more money than my opponent, and junking him helped early on. So I do take the last game here to finish with 4 points from this match. So thanks for watching, and I will see you.